saying that.
It's a tourist trap, as they say.
It's true. They got me at the cinema. Right, we'll get into all that then. I'll do a quick intro. We're without Mr. Scott, so it's not Scotty, Motty, Youngy and Joe tonight. It's Scotty, Youngy and Joe. David Scott can't be with us, but he'll be back very soon, so don't worry, don't panic. We've not sacked him. He's busy. But Youngy and Joe are here, as you can see. And we've got some topics to get through. Starting with you, Mr. James Young, fresh from your trip to Loftus Road, watching the football and all that.
The Cayenne Prince Foundation Stadium now.
Cayenne Prince Foundation Stadium, obviously, named after that young lad who sadly passed away.
Come on, Jay. Yeah, what?
I need to get with the times. I still call the community shield, the charity shield. There you go, you see. Yeah. So I do need to get with the times.
It's always the Carling Cup to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You still call Wembley the Cardiff City Stadium, don't you?
No, because that was the Millennium Stadium.
The Millennium, I was about to say, yeah.
Same thing, innit?
It's a shit venue.
No, it isn't.
Of course it is. You're just saying that because you're from there.
They're separate grounds.
What is the Cardiff City Stadium, an actual stadium where Cardiff City play?
Yes. You've got the Cardiff City Stadium, which was built after Millennium Park. The Millennium Stadium, which is now called the Principality Stadium, but no one in Wales calls it the Principality Stadium because they don't like being referred to as the Principality, so they still call it the Millennium Stadium. It's the big one that's like 70,000 that has rugby matches.
But obviously no one's really paying attention to all that, are they? Didn't realise I touched such a nerve there, James.
Quick, moving swiftly on before we upset any more Welsh people. James, what have you been looking at us for this week?
We should do
looking at for us to get my words in the right order. Got the Observer. Check you so liberal. Hey.
Yeah. We were actually talking about the most important story that I found this week. It was ticket prices Odeon kids every day throughout the holidays, adult and child admission from £2.50. So that's really the biggest story this week.
That's the most local radio story we've ever done, that, isn't it? Just so get your kiddie winks. Now they're out of school, get them down to the cinema. Bet you wish you knew about that, didn't you, Jay?
Well, there's a thing, because I thought, View run it as well. So that's what I looked at, because I went to the View the other day. And as we were just talking about, I got absolutely stung.
What happened then?
Well, went to see Space Jam, and I bought 5 tickets, because there's 5 of us. Which is like, there's like 8 quid each.
One in.
Yeah, I should have done because my youngest ended up sitting on my knee for half of it. So yeah, that's like 40 quid. And then for slushies and all the rest of it, it came to like 35 quid. And we took our own sweets in as well. So that's it's a big chunk. So if you're getting it for $2.49 each, then that's obviously a lot cheaper. So yeah, that's good to know. And I'll be taking full advantage of that because the school holidays are a nightmare occupying the kids. You absolutely burn through money, especially now we're not in lockdown and they just want to go out all the time and do stuff, which is fair enough.
Feel like I'm on the Radio Manchester Make a Difference desk.
It's good, isn't it? I like this. Up next, there's been someone leaving dog poo on their public grounds. If anyone sees them, just tell them they're an absolute rascal.
And Joe, what money saving schemes have you got for us during the summer holidays?
Martin Lewis.
Money saving schemes. My biggest one, just robbing. Robbing because
people or from shops?
No, from shops.
Right, okay.
Yeah. The bigger the chain, the less guilty you have to feel. Just
that is. They say it's not a victimless crime, but it isn't it really?
It is, yeah. Like if you go, like say you're in Starbucks, let's say you're getting a coffee, as you're sort of shimmying across down to the waiting section, pop a couple gold coins in your jacket, maybe a Stroop waffle or 2, slide them in, they'll never know. And with those sort of big sort of plastic perspex things between you and them, they can't even lean over and see how many are missing. So if you want to do that, do that.
I know.
If you go in Starbucks, what you can do is pick up a cup when you go in there, one of those green cups. Get them to put your coffee in it, and then you get the cup for free because they think it's yours, and you get a discount because you're using that cup. So
that's a really good one.
What I was going to say was, I know someone who got banned from the co-op for stealing vodka, so it doesn't always work.
Wasn't that Scalsky that was doing the rounds?
That's tricky. You have to reach behind the counter to grab that.
You seen that Scals guy getting told he can't? He's bad. Have you seen the clip that went viral?
Oh yeah, I have seen him.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
What is it? Times are hard and friends are few. Ta-ra to fucking you. Yeah, quality. I love that.
Really
Your
good.
bad love. Your bad love. What?
Yeah.
I saw a great program the other day. Actually, it was like Britain's toughest pubs or something like that, and it was like a Sky program from about 10 years ago, and they went around all the ones in like Britain, and there was this mad guy in Aberdeen that was telling like all the people that were drinking to just fuck off.
One of the greatest, and I haven't seen that one, so I'm not saying this one's better or worse, but the one I've seen of that is one of the greatest things I've ever seen on television. It's a pub called The Sportsman. I think it's in Birmingham or near Norwich, and some of they make their own cider, which no one knows how strong it is, which is so illegal, by the way, because you have to have an ABV on everything you sell. No one knows how strong it is. People go in. There's one bloke who puts his glass eye in his glass at the start of the night, so you know it's his glass, so no one fucks around with his cider. There's another bloke who just sits there biting the glass and eating the glass from the glass. There's a third bloke who you see has clearly got one leg, drinking cider out of his leg, going, what happened to your leg? Well, I got bladdered in here, fell off the railway bridge onto the train line, got hit by a train, was fine, just hit by a train. The train that came to collect me, the sort of emergency train, ran over my leg and took my leg off. All because he was bladdered on cider. And it's one of the greatest videos of all time, this sort of 9-minute video. But yeah, what a sensational series.
The Sportsman?
No, the programme.
No, sorry, the pub he was on about.
That pub is called The Sportsman, yeah.
The Sportsman. And what's the thing you're on about?
Britain's hardest pubs or Britain's toughest pubs. There's another one in Aldershot where the guys were stapling beer mats to their forehead and hitting pool balls at each other's forehead.
Fantastic.
As you do. So, well, there's something to check out there. We're checking them out. Do you know what? I've obviously not been in a pub for ages because I don't really drink anymore, but there used to be some cracking pubs around our way, but they all just loads of them end up getting shut down for drugs and stuff.
I've put the link to that Sportsman clip because I saved it as a favourite on my Google. So that link is in the side there. Hopefully we can get that in the description. Maybe if people want to see it.
I remember
the Grey Horse. That's a great one in Manchester.
That's a good one. I worked in a pub in Romford when I was at uni, and I quite enjoyed it. Right? I used to get loads of sticks as a United fan, and they're all Spurs or West Ham fans. But I remember once it went off like in this pub massively, like it was like a proper, Western chairs getting smashed around people's heads.
Ducking down.
Yeah. Some guy went to his car and pulled like a little axe out of his car. He was like a fucking carpenter or something. I presume he was. He had a fucking little axe in his car. And it was just like, it was honestly, it was going right off, right? And like glasses, pint pots getting thrown. And I remember I was stood at the bar like this. And I remember there was a guy at the bar and he was like, with his tenner in his hand, he went, "When you ready, Jay?" Like, there was nothing happening. Yeah, same again, mate.
When you're ready, Jay. When you've sorted this travelling circus of absolute nutters out, then I'll another mile, please, Jay.
Yeah, he just didn't. He hadn't moved from his stool. He was just like didn't care about the fact that there was just carnage going on behind him. I was fully respected.
There was one in Preston that I went to once that had like shards of glass on the table. And it was really dodgy, right? And there was like a car park, like ticket machine outside. And the guy I was with sort of went up to him and said, like, "How do I pay for this? 'Cause it's not obvious." And just the landlord just went into this big rant. And he's like, "Doesn't matter if you're black, blue, or whatever, it will still fucking get you if you don't pay, mate." And he was getting really angry about people not paying for this ticket machine, like full on kicking off. Funny.
Preston's nice, isn't it? It's lovely, Preston. I like Preston.
Nice stadium, though.
Yeah.
It's a nice stadium, Deep, though. Yeah. Did you go to the FA Cup when we played them there a few years ago?
No. I went to see Preston play because I've got grandparents that live not far away actually from there, and a very nice statue outside of
something. No, I went to the FA Cup game when we played them. I used to cover the odd Preston game for when I was Rock FM reporter. Sorry, Joe, I interrupted you then. You was talking about not money saving schemes. What was it you've been looking at? You've been looking at something to do with the Olympics, haven't you?
Well, just this whole thing about this. I mean, it started off as people wanting to call them anti-sex beds, basically, all the athletes. But I think the biggest scandal isn't the fact that they're trying to stop them having sex, which would be bad. But secondly, the fact that they've put in all these like the greatest athletes in the world on what is essentially a series of Kellogg's cornflake boxes with a mattress on it. Have you seen these cardboard beds?
Have you seen them, James? Have you seen them, mate?
They
And if anyone
look-
hasn't seen them, you know, it's not hard to Google them and find them. It's
I'll put a
basically
picture
just
up. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
yeah, it's literally just loads of cardboard boxes put together with a mattress and a quilt on it. It's embarrassing. It's worse than like I used to go to Castle Irwell dorms in Salford, which got knocked down like 2 years after I left them. I think they were about 60 quid a week, and they had mice that just used to just run through. There's a block of like 5 flats next to each other. The mice would just run through them. If you move your pots and pans, mice would fly out. And I'd rather stay in the beds there than the ones in the Olympic Village. These are some of the best athletes, if not the best athletes in the world, and they're staying on cardboard boxes. That is a bit of a piss take, isn't it? 5 years they've been training for this. Yeah.
What's the thinking here, though? Why are they staying? Because surely they've got enough money, the Olympic Committee or whoever's
Well,
in
they're
charge of it all.
sustainable beds. So they're made out of recycled cardboard and apparently can hold up to 200 kilograms, which, you know, that's basically 2 big weightlifters, which, you know, is nice to know if anyone gets scared at night or wants a cuddle. But I just think, like, surely there's other sustainable things that aren't cardboard. Like, cardboard is just mashed up trees and paper and stuff. So just give them wood, which is the same thing. You know what I mean? It's not like cardboard grows naturally and from the ground. You have to make it. Just use wood. What are they playing at? Honestly, how much of a slap in the face is that? You train for that long. There's not even any people in the crowd, so you can't. You know, you don't get that. Like, how much does a triple jumper love there? Get everyone clapping along. Can't do any of that. None of that anymore. No triple jumping clap. And now you've got to sleep on the cornflake boxes.
Where do you stand on that, funny enough? You mentioned that about the Olympics and the fact that there's no crowds there, because there's also few athletes who've had to drop out on it because of COVID. And there's a sort of school of thought that this almost feels a little bit like, not the same thing, but similar to, say, you know, Moscow 1980 where the Americans pulled out, or Los Angeles 84 when the Soviet Union, I think, pulled out. You know, it's sort of like, is there going to be like almost an asterisk next to some of these gold medals where it's like, okay, you won, but a lot of athletes, or some of the best athletes maybe in your category can compete? Or do you think it's almost like it's the similar thing to if an athlete got injured before the games as well? Where do you stand on that, Younger?
Well, we could have a hurricane as well soon, so that would be fun if that actually hits.
What? What's that? I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, there's like a massive like hurricane that's predicted to hit Japan over like the next sort of few weeks, apparently. A couple of the things have already been cancelled. So, look, I mean, there's a lot of questions as to whether it should actually be going ahead in the first place, because Tokyo is in a state of emergency. And I think if I was in Japan, would I probably like all these athletes and press and everyone else coming to the country when it's not doing well in terms of COVID rates? Probably not, but they've spent so much money on it that it's almost like they can't cancel it completely, because it has to go ahead, because all these athletes are preparing and they're in the best shape of their life, and they've also spent millions and millions and millions of taxpayers' money. If they just cancelled it completely, like, that would almost be even worse than what it's like at the minute.
Yeah, it's always a shame sometimes, because countries like, when I was over in South Africa for the World Cup, I know it's a bit different, but they were so desperate to host that tournament. They just sort of like sold the souls for it, basically. And they had all these stadiums and things that it just wasn't feasible. Like, they shouldn't have really done it, to be honest with you, because South Africa now is in sort of the middle of a crisis. There's nothing not related to the World Cup, but they had these stadiums out in the middle of nowhere that they were trying to get like local rugby teams to use, and they were like, well, we can't use it. We've got like 12,000, well, not even that, we've got like 2,000 fans, and this is an 80,000 seat stadium. Do you know what I mean? We just can't afford to run. They can't even afford to cover the electric. No. And I know it's like, you're so looking forward to it. You're so geared towards it. They've obviously been sort of proper excited about it. I remember when Manchester was trying to get the Olympics for
2000.
Well, it was nice. Yeah, Sydney and 96. People forget that we bid it for the one that we lost to Atlanta as well. We were desperate to get them. In the end, they just sort of gave us the Commonwealth Games as a, you know, to keep us happy. And then obviously the rest is issue. What happened with the stadium there? So yeah, I do feel for them a little bit, because they have obviously been looking forward to this, and it's a great honour in it. And you saw what London 2012 did for everyone. I think
Partly,
that was sort of.
I don't think the UK should have had that in the first place. I thought it was pretty immoral. 2 years into austerity, when services are being cut so much, and we're spending millions on a stadium which doesn't really need to be there in the first place. West Ham don't want it. They've spent a lot of money on an athletic stadium that really its purpose at the minute is being used as a football stadium, and it is a white elephant. I mean, West Ham. Speak to any West Ham fan. Do they really want to play in that stadium? No. But
Upson Park. So Upson Park was a
Exactly.
really intimidating ground. I went to Upson Park, and it was old school football ground, and it was the crowd were quite close to the pitch, and it was one of those grounds that, you know what I mean, like you knew when you were there. If that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't one of those where it felt like quiet or corporate or whatever. It felt like a proper stadium. So yeah, it's a bit of I suppose it is a bit of a shame, really, because, like you say, West Ham aren't the club like who get 70,000 fans or whatever, 60,000 fans. So that was a bit of a shame. I mean, I know what you mean with austerity, because it is a piss take when you cut in so many services. I think there was a lot of positives from the 2012 Olympics in the way that some of the people involved, like Danny Boyle's opening ceremony, for example, I was a big fan of, because it was so left wing. It just boiled everyone's pissed in it. Like the Daily Mail were writing articles on it, and people were complaining about the fact it paid homage to the NHS and to the Windrush generation, and that it was all about embracing multiculturalism and all that sort of stuff. Then you had Super Saturday when we won those 3 gold medals, which is obviously, a great day. But no, when you look back and you think, this was, like you said, 2 years into austerity, and we're spending all that money on it, and we're still sort of paying it off almost. If you look at some of the things.
And also, outside of London, I know Manchester, the velodrome from the Commonwealth Games, but did anyone else really get much of a benefit from that, as much as London did anyway?
They've got a nice gold mailbox in Sheffield.
Is that for Jessica Ennis?
Isn't it? Yeah.
They painted them all, didn't they, for the gold medal? No, they painted it for the gold medal winners, didn't they? For the
yeah, that's Jessica Ennis, is that one. So when you say, did the rest of the country receive a bonus, when you pop your letters into that letterbox specifically, it just feels a little bit nicer in here in the heart.
Just
so
cheers you up a little bit. Sets your day off on the right way.
That's all anyone else got out of it. A couple of gold letterboxes knocking about. That's it.
Bit of gloss, bit of gold gloss, or whatever it is. Yeah, it's not exactly
the youth centre that's closed down just down the road from it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it was
no funding.
It seemed like something that would. Well, they always sell it like that, though, don't they? The whole country's going to benefit. Do you know what I mean? This is what they're saying about the World Cup in Qatar. That they say aren't they saying that they're going to dismantle the stadiums and move them to neighbouring countries and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Which is just, and then they're like, oh, actually, that's not really going to happen. I mean, they just say whatever they can to sort of keep you happy and get these bids, because the powers that be just love the sort of the pomp and ceremony and the attention that comes from it. But a lot of the time, you just, you're struggling to pay for it. I mean, what happened? I know it's not. I don't think it's related, but Greece went to the dogs, didn't they, after Athens?
Well, their Olympic Village is completely abandoned from it still.
It's like,
same with Brazil. I mean, they had the World Cup and they had the Olympics straight after it, which they really couldn't afford. And they've got stadiums like the one in the Amazon rainforest that was being used as a bus depot because they just couldn't find anything to do for it.
Yeah, and I mean, it shows as well, if Greece can't host an Olympics and not collapse afterwards, when they've got such a great history of doing that, it shows that it's pretty difficult to sort of follow up, doesn't it? When even Greece can't sort of make the Olympics work, it's just a weird thing, isn't it? Like, oh, now all of a sudden we've got 6 stadiums that we didn't used to have, and obviously the reason we didn't have them was because we didn't need them, and now we need to pretend we need them and make use of them. Well, obviously not. Yeah,
it is a bit of a madness. Talking about the Tories and austerity, James, you were talking about levelling up, weren't you? If that even is a thing, have you noticed about
that? I think it's pretty shameful again from the government. But I mean, it's not really a surprise with Boris Johnson. He comes out and makes these grand statements of levelling up. I don't even think he knows what it means, to be honest with you, because the Conservative Party since 2010 have basically actually made inequalities far worse than the UK. I mean, even during the pandemic too, in terms of the fact that they're going to cut the free school meals now, or they're going to reduce the amount of I think universal credit that was increased during the pandemic. They look like they're going to cut that down again now, and they've cut foreign aid as well. So this idea that they're trying to level up society and invest in poor areas, it kind of doesn't speak like he's really going to put anything towards it, because they've actually made it a lot worse over the past 12 years by closing youth centres and austerity and policies like that, whereby the Conservative Party have just seemed to make themselves richer and not really care about anyone else below them. I mean, looking Theresa May's whole ministerial part where she was involved. I mean, you've got things like Grenfell Tower, which is really caused by inequality. You've got other things as well that happened throughout David Cameron's reign as well. That really, it's really striking in terms of how much homelessness increased and other things as well.
No, I agree. I sort of did my tenure as a reporter during the Tories' reign, if you can call it that, the austerity years, 2010 onwards. And I saw that a lot of the stories, you know, you mentioned there, like just libraries closing, people protesting about that, Shaw Star Centres closing. I know a lot of people that relied upon them, you know, especially sort of single parents and stuff, got so much support from them. Just communities decimated, really, by sort of policies and austerity in particular, but other closures as well. And it was just untenable, and it just didn't make any sense how this could work. And also, I don't even think it made sense from an economic point of view. They say, looking back now, it was, you know, more of a political decision rather than an economic one. It didn't actually work, austerity.
It doesn't benefit anyone. I mean, there's a great book called The Spirit Level by Wilkinson and Pickett that looks at how inequality actually doesn't benefit anyone, because if you've got extreme rich and extreme poor next to each other, like you've seen in certain developing countries, crime rates tend to increase. There's other issues as well that actually just doesn't benefit the people that are richer, because they don't seem to get anything from it, in the sense that those that are increasingly poorer are actually harder to employ. And also, on the other hand, you've got those people that are at the bottom of society. It just doesn't work at all as a country if you've got that extreme wealth and poverty right next to each other.
It does feel, Joe, doesn't it, like we do live in a bit of a world of extremes at the minute, where you're hearing like all these stories of so many billionaires being created, and these, you know, some of the richest men in the world who have like more money than anyone's ever had. And then you have a point where even people who are in what you would historically consider to be decently paid jobs end up going to food banks. It just seems so strange how sort of polarized the sort of UK can be when it comes to money at the minute.
It doesn't seem like there's a sort of the line you used to get as a kid was, get a full-time job and you'll be all right. You can if you have a full-time job, you can have a house, you can have, you know, a kid, you can go on holiday once a year. That was the sort of the thing, wasn't it? That the sort of everyone gets sold. Just get a job anywhere. As long as you're working, you're fine. Well, we know that's not the case. And like you said, it's not just people on minimum wage. There's plenty of people who are above minimum wage who still can't afford to live, let alone, you know, go on holiday once a year or once every other year. It's just so weird. And like, you know, in Worksop and stuff where I'm from, seeing that the sort of the way that things will get shut down and little businesses slowly just get shut down, and sort of, when I was a kid, there was very few big businesses in Worksop. There was one supermarket, and the other supermarket was just like on the outside of town. There was loads of just small businesses through things. I mean, there's a lot of charity shops and a lot of, you know, not necessarily thriving, loads of money there because there's just not a lot of money there. But now you walk through the town, it's half the things are shut down that used to be there. There's even places like school wear centres where everyone used to go and get your school uniform. They're not there anymore. There's 5 supermarkets in the centre of town. It's like everything's just been replaced by that, and anyone that isn't sort of you know, involved with that just seemingly doesn't have anywhere to go. And for some reason, during the last election, Worksop voted Conservative for the first time in I think 50 odd years. Worksop was one of the longest sort of standing Labour constituencies in the country, and they voted Conservative after, you know, what has been seemingly horrible 10 years. I mean, I don't really understand it, but the more you see it, the more you sort of can't believe it, really. And this whole levelling up thing, like, well, we've just decided that helping people who are struggling is a good idea. We've just decided that now. Like, what are you on about? How is this, like, what we're going to do is, instead of crushing people who already don't have much like we were doing, we're actually going to try and help them a little bit. I mean, it's kind of a wacky thought, guys, but instead of just destroying the worst off in the country, we're going to sort them out. So big pats on the back for the Conservative Party. What are you talking about? Acting like you've just invented helping people.
It's mad. Just on that, Joe, though, can you? I know you said you don't know why, but can you get your head around it? Why? I'm struggling with that one, because it's a sort of, you know, and obviously, James, you might have an opinion, but just going back to Worksop, you know, a town that's obviously struggling because of the actions of the government.
Yeah.
is voting for this government now. Why do you think? Why do you think that is? Can you work that out?
There's a couple of things. One is, the few things that spring to mind immediately, and obviously I've not lived there for 5 or 6 years now, but my growing up there and going to school there and living there my whole life, it seems as though a lot of people's opinion is the Conservatives are the party to vote for if you're into business and trying to make money. And people that's the sort of the mentality is they like business and money, and we need money, so let's vote for them. The other two things are, one, a lot of people still blame Labour for the recession. Even now, a lot of people sort of think they did that's what fucked everything, and the Tories are just trying to help. That's another thing. And the other thing is, I think there is a bit of especially in place like Worksop, and as much as it pains me to say it, people want less immigration. People didn't like that there was a lot of Polish people that came to live in Worksop, and there was a lot of people from other communities that came to live in Worksop, and people think of the Conservatives as being stronger on that, and I do think that is a big part of it, but not the main part, but again, just something that goes into it.
It makes sense. James, what do you make of all that? Make of the fact that you mentioned there, you did it very well, spoke about austerity and spoke about the decimation of communities. And I feel that, and that's what feels happened. Yeah, Boris has got a bigger majority than, many people expected. We had a situation where we had hung parliaments, where we had coalitions. Not anymore. He's got a pretty healthy majority. What do you agree with Joe that you think that is like sort of some people looking at blaming the Labour and looking at sort of a way out of it is to sort of go the Conservative way almost?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think Brexit was the sort of fault line in the San Andreas fault that was made bigger. The tension was always there, but I think Brexit, a lot of people voted on things. If you ignore the whole, the racist element to it, which is you can't ignore it, but the idea that people felt left behind and they felt like people weren't representing them, and they felt like for a time, even though they didn't care in the long run, and most people could see that Farage and everyone else were speaking to them and they were actually trying to include them in their manifestos and their referendums. I think that was the spark for a lot of people that thought, right, they're actually speaking to us now. Somehow Brexit became a working class movement, according to certain people, whereby it wasn't, and it actually didn't benefit them at all. But I think that alongside the Conservatives winning the election shows how poorly Labour have failed to speak to people. I mean, if you look at previously, Corbyn aside, Starmer, and before him as well, Blair too, has kind of made the Labour Party too close towards the centre, because Labour were in power from 97 to 2010 and they never failed to really solve the issues properly, and so we're just not going to trust them, because I think the issue is in certain places Labour councillors have been there for so long and they almost get too complacent and feel like they'll just get voted in every time and don't even bother to show up to some of these constituencies, because they feel like there's no point in doing it, because they have this feeling that they'll just always be elected. And you see it in Wales as well. Certain places in South Wales that are former mining communities, Labour have got such a stronghold on those areas that they don't even show up and campaign, because they just feel like it's a given.
Another thing, sorry, just stepping with Worksop. Another big thing was one of it was John Mann, who has got a bit of people somewhat know him despite the size of his constituency. It was John Mann who was there for a long time, and then he became a member of the House of Lords. So basically, it was I actually can't remember who the candidate was because I wasn't voting there at the time, but it became a different person that then lost because he was no longer there. So I think that was another reason with Worksop specifically. But even then, it had been such a long time. I think people think as well. I think a lot of times people overestimate the sort of the work that local government does and think, it's Labour now and things are shit. Nothing to do with the fact that Conservatives are actually the ones in power. We've got John Mann and things aren't actually improving. So let's go with Conservative rather than thinking that maybe if we get a bigger change across the country, things might change in the right direction. But who knows? It's
quite interesting because you both sort of picked up on it. You mentioned James there about Brexit, and also you mentioned there, Joe, about sort of locally as well. And is this whole thing one with the red wall getting crushed by the Tories, we were able to break through this sort of rock solid block of staunch Labour sort of constituencies, and I think it is a sort of weird marriage sometimes with the Tories of these sort of blue-blooded toffs and certain working class people who sort of look to the Tories or vote sort of have right wing. Not I want to say right wing views. I don't mean neo-Nazi-esque views. I mean slightly sort of
Do you think
right
it's to do with
views.
Thatcher? Because a lot of working class people in certain communities despise it, but then there's other places too, especially in the South, that actually support Thatcher because they got their first house because of her and certain things like that, and were duped into thinking that trickle-down economics actually benefited them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I sort of whenever you say trickle-down economics, like, it just sort of disheartens me, because there was that, especially in the 80s, when that both sides of the Atlantic, that was the big thing, when it was like, Reagan and Thatcher, this whole supply side economics, and like that's going to, benefit everyone. And I just think it was deeply flawed, and it sort of showed in the early 90s when everything sort of started unraveling. But yeah, no, I think that is a fair point. And I think a lot of the time with sort of, working class people, and I do it myself, and it goes back to Brexit as well, and it goes back to even in America, like Trump and populism. It's if you're offering someone the opportunity of being better, of making their lives better, even if it's pie in the sky, some people go for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was the whole thing with Brexit. It was leave, we're offering you something better. They weren't really, but they were telling you you can have more control over any your own rules or laws, even though most people didn't even know what fucking EU laws they didn't like. You're going to have more money because we're going to stop sending money to the EU.
And we'll get all the benefits of being in the EU without being in it, and it'll be the easiest trade deal in human history.
Exactly.
And all this other stuff. Now, if you're not politically savvy, and I don't want to come across here as condescending or those sort of things, but if you're being told that by people and you sort of believe it, then you'll think, well, actually, we're getting all this stuff and we'll remain in the single market and we've got all this other stuff, then surely it's a no-brainer because we pay less money and we still get all the benefits.
No, go on. Yeah, it's right.
I don't think it's, and I'm not saying you were doing this, James, but it's never going to be the case. And I don't even think it necessarily is a goal that's worth chasing, that everyone is going to be politically savvy. That's never going to be the case in a country. It's up to the people who are in politics and who are on both sides of it, whatever the given argument is, to put their point across properly. And what you have to say the Conservatives did so well with Brexit. Or I say Conservatives, people who were pro-Brexit, because half the Conservatives weren't even pro-Brexit with it. But that's what they did so well in that instance. They put their message across so much better than the Remain side. Remain's argument was, it's pretty good, this life, isn't it? And theirs was, look how much better it could be. Here's how much better it could be. And that's the thing, I say this all the time, in football, in anything, in politics, in everything. Potential is the most valued commodity in the world. Potential is the most exciting thing. That's what stocks are based on. That's what, this whole sort of, obviously we protect children because they're, defenseless and different. But one of the things that's so protected about it's the kids are the living embodiment of potential, aren't they? Who knows what they'll go on to do? They are the future. That's what people love. And the thing that they had with Brexit that Remain didn't have was potential. Look what it could be. Here's what it could be. We know what it is now. Look what it could be. And I think once you've got potential on your side, I think that's what Corbyn got a little bit of, but obviously not enough. Potential is so hard to overcome, and they did that. I mean, unfortunately, very well.
And there's
go on, James.
This fear element to it as well. I mean, there's a great Adam Curtis series called The Power of Nightmares, where he argues that a lot of the policies of your Bushes and some of your other politicians, things like the war on terror and certain other things, are fought on this idea of fear. And once you start to push that into people instead of hope, you almost go too far the other way, and you say, well, if we don't do this certain thing, then this is what is going to happen. And people almost get radicalized into thinking that going to war with countries like Iraq, whether they have weapons or mass destruction or not, has to happen, because if that doesn't happen, this will happen. And the Soviet Union and the Cold War and all these other things, it's built on this idea of fear.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You talk about that mix almost, don't you? And it almost evolved as well, from what you saw with with the populism side of things and that potential and that making things better, and the fear with Trump. Everything Trump said was nonsense. It was bollocks, but it was it was almost offering you something better. Where Hillary Clinton, for example, was saying, we're going to be stronger together and we're going to do this and we're going to carry on. He was saying, well, you're scared about terrorism. Well, I'll just stop all the Muslims coming in. Well, that's not going to solve anything, but it's at least an idea. So if you're thinking like that, you think, well, he's got an idea for that. You're scared about immigration, your jobs and all that. I'm going to build a wall. Again, fucking not really feasible.
Proper 2D solutions, them, aren't they? Just like what we're going to do is just put something in front of them. They won't be able to get around that.
It's like, what's your issue? Terrorism, we'll just stop all Muslims. Immigration, build a wall. Any other problems we've got? The economy, you're scared about your jobs, or even like with medical, the healthcare. He didn't even actually say anything other than it was going to be so good and so beautiful. Is a solution to Obamacare. Up until the point of like the night before the election, he was still talking about his plan that he'd not revealed. The following election, 4 years later, we never saw his big plan, and it was just like, we're going to replace Obamacare with something beautiful and better, and it's going to be amazing, without actually ever having a fucking plan. And there was an element of that with Brexit, like you said there, James, take back control. What are you taking back control of? Do people actually know? No, they don't. They just feel that. It's almost like a vibe and it's like a feeling. We've got control now. We're in control of it all. And if your counter argument to that is, at the end of a time when people are sort of struggling, is pretty much the status quo. If you vote for Remain, things will stay the same. If you vote for, when it was like someone mentioned, I think it was Joe that mentioned Jeremy Corbyn, Andy Burnham was the overwhelming favourite in that election. Yeah, Corbyn pretty much wiped the floor with him almost, because Corbyn was against the status quo, against austerity. Do you know what I mean? We're not going to just accept it. We're not going to have the same as what we've been having, and we are going to fight it. And it proper galvanised young people, especially in a way that Burnham didn't really at the time. Because you're offering people, regardless of how realistic it is, change. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like Obama ran on it, didn't he? Just change. That was his fucking thing. I'm going to change things. Do you know what I mean? And Trump and others took it a little bit further than that. And I'm not saying like Obama, because they're quite different, but it is that whole thing of, I'm going to make things a lot better by changing the status quo. Whereas if you've got someone saying,
Blair do that to a certain extent. I mean, that was literally his campaign song.
Yeah, things can only get better, 100%. I mean, to be fair, with Blair, I always think it was kind of like the perfect storm for him, because Major had a fucking disaster. Like, in the 5 years of John Major, from 92 to 97, you had like Black Wednesday, I think it was, when we crashed, the economy had crashed and Europe wouldn't help us and all that sort of stuff. He was on a very slim majority anyway. I think when he won, I think he won a majority of 7 or something, or 7 or 11, I forget what the number was. He only just beat Kinnock. And then he had all these scandals. There was the MP who died self-asphyxiating, doing that thing where you masturbate and all that sort of stuff. There was the David Mellor scandal. This was all on like the thing where the Tories had this back to basics idea where it was all family values. And then one after another Tory MP was getting caught up in scandals and having affairs. And it was just, it was just a fucking disaster for him. And then Blair comes along and he's like fresh-faced, different, do you know what I mean? Quite young and vibrant. And not what Labour had been about. Labour had been very old school and trade union, left wing, and the Arthur Scargill types. So he was like he was basically a fucking Tory, to be honest with you. But he had the package.
Well, he invited the Britpop stars down to number 10. How can you hate him?
Yeah, exactly. Noel Gallagher got on stage at the Brits and said everyone should vote for Tony Blair. So how can you argue with that?
He likes football.
They all like football. They like football so much they support 2 teams. How can you not like that?
I asked
Jake, go on. Go.
No, I was just going to say, I asked David Cameron who he thought was going to win the derby once. We interviewed him at the Etihad, and we went round like it's shit. By the way, getting a question with the Prime Minister. People think, oh yeah, it'd be great. You get one question that they know about. You have to tell them what you're going to ask, because a lot of it's local in it. So when I was in Preston and we interviewed him, it was about the bus depot in Preston. So they get briefed. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, it's a mundane answer. So we went round in this like huddle, and then I think I was first, and then it went round all the way to the end. And then when it got back to me, like that was finished, but I just snuck in. I was like, because we're at the Etihad, and it was the day before the Manchester derby. I said, do you think it's going to win the derby? And he laughed. He went, well, considering who I support, I'm not the best person to ask about football. And I thought, like, you don't even know you fucking support, you dickhead. But I didn't bother saying that.
Yeah, who do you support?
Because he got West Ham and he got
Thatcher.
Villa mixed up with West Ham, didn't he? Because he's a Villa fan, so he says. And then he claimed it. He said something about West Ham because he's fucking, he obviously got the colours mixed up. Or just got confused, I should say, by the
I
colours.
do that. I support, United, Barnsley, Rotherham, Liverpool. Just if they've got red on, they're good. Forest, any of them. Just whatever. I support half of Sheffield United as well. I don't like the white half as much. I like the red bits. Like, that's what we all do, innit?
Go Reds.
Go Reds. Go Reds. That's what
Soccer.
they sing. That's what they sing on their, footy things. Terraces. Also, they're not. The words aren't even remotely similar. Aston Villa, West Ham. How can you get the two confused? I know this was 15 years.
This is the same guy that said
that
his favourite band was the Smiths and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Also, think though, the amount of people.
Do you remember when he said that? And Paul Weller and Johnny Morris both come out and say, "Please don't ever listen to my music ever again."
Don't talk about it. Don't listen to it ever again. They can't stop him doing that. I like how they think only people that we like are buying our records. Don't even listen to our music again.
The Eastern Rifles is about him.
Fantastic.
It's fucking brilliant. I was going to talk sort of as well, talking of Tories, because it seems to be a growing theme of, it's a struggle to keep up with the shit show that is this government, but now they've sort of reintroducing expanding stop and search powers with this whole Section 60 thing, which is now, I think they piloted it in a few areas. They've not released the reports of this pilot because the sort of general thinking is this pilot wasn't a success, but they're going to do it anyway because that's what they do. And the idea behind the Section 60 stop and search, I think you can stop anyone and search them if there's violence, and you don't even need to be suspicious of them. If there's say there's violence happening in an area and you see someone nearby or whatever, or you know what I mean, there's an incident that's happened, you can just stop whoever you want and search them. And the idea is that, this is going to reduce crime. I think when they did have a report, I think it was the Criminal Justice Alliance did a report on it, and it found that I think less than 1% of people searched actually had a weapon on them, because you're basically searching for knives. And it was disproportionately, I think you were 18 times more likely to get searched if you were black than if you were white. So it is racial profiling, basically. So the idea is that this is going to, the party line is this reduces crime, that this is going to get knives off our streets and stop violent offenders. And I think it's helped tackle burglaries as well, because you're going to be, nicking burglars or whatever. But in reality, all it does is it just fucking alienates people. It makes them feel the police are against them. It's a waste of police time as well. It doesn't help in terms of tackling crime. It just means police are spending more time just fucking doing, pointless stops and searches. And it's just sort of dog whistling as well to racists, because you just see more black people getting stopped by the police.
It's a bit like the counter-terrorism laws as well that were introduced, where they can just arrest people on suspicion without any real evidence to support it. And again, it doesn't really solve the issue of why people carry knives in the first place. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about austerity and things like that. People had youth clubs to go to, people had football that they could go to after school, and those sort of things that would actually reduce crime a lot more and stop people from joining gangs than stopping them on the street. This idea of this short, sharp shock approach that was actually very popular on the Thatcher government, of basically punishing people for really small things and then basically giving them a label as a criminal, which therefore means they'll actually commit more crime than doing the other approach, which is actually, hang on, why are people doing this in the first place? And then actually tackling the issues within society and then doing that in as well. I don't know. I just don't see it actually solves the issue.
No, I mean, when I was in London studying, stop and search was rife, if you can use that term. The police used it a lot. And I was at uni, and I remember like in Islington, for example, one of my unis, I went to 2 unis and one was in Islington. You just come up the escalators and the police would be there quite a lot. And the amount of times I'd get stopped compared to some of my classmates. Another lad who was an Asian lad, Taha, I was friends with, he got stopped constantly. He's a tall lad. He just, to be honest, he looks Asian. So, people probably thought he was, he's Muslim, whatever. He is Muslim. And he just got stopped all the time. And like, you can complain, and, if you keep your thing they give you, you can say like, listen, I've been stopped so many times, this is ridiculous. But who does that and where does it go? Do you know what I mean? And it just does. Like, I was a bit older. I was a mature student, so I was like 27, 28. And because I'd been in trouble with the police before in my life, and now I wasn't in trouble with them anymore, I almost didn't mind getting stops and searched because I was like, I haven't actually got anything on me. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know, like 10 years earlier, I'd have been fucking kicking off, but I was like, I wasn't asked. But I just think for young lads, especially like from my point of view, it was like lads who perhaps one or two lads who were at uni with, getting stops and searched all the time when you've done nothing wrong. It's not nice. It's not a good experience. It makes you sort of angry. It makes you feel like you're getting picked on and sort of demonized. And I just think it's just a fucking idiotic approach to policing. Like you said, James, you know, without going all Tony Blair, you need to look at the causes of crime as well, not just the crime, you know, not just the criminals. And it's just, I just think it's fucking, the stats show it doesn't work. And I think Boris Johnson called it a kind way of tackling crime. It's just fucking, you know, and also today, we've come out with about doing community service in high-vis jackets or high-vis vests, like chain gangs, so that everyone can see you're doing your community service to sort of show everyone what you've done wrong. And I just think, what the fuck are you on about? How is that going to help? So people come out of their house and they see a load of people wearing high-vis jackets doing, or high-vis vests doing community service. And the people in that area are going to be fearful because they think, fuck me, there's a load of criminals on my doorstep delivering leaflets or painting the fucking park gates or whatever. And then the people who are actually doing it are going to feel like shit because they feel like the community just fucking hates them when they're already doing the punishment. It's just a bad idea. It just is.
People are going to be walking past, taking the pic. Like, that's a very American thing, the way of doing things, isn't it? That, you know, you see it a lot in America. People with the high-vis jacket on, working on the road, working, you know, doing sort of. And you just think, like, why are we taking like criminal justice system tips from a country that's got 2 million people in jail? Like, America's is just an absolute shambles in terms of the way they handle jails and the way they handle rehabilitation of things. Like, why is that? Why are we going that way with it? And also the stop and search stuff. You just think the police aren't meant to be a constant weight on people. They're not meant to be an ever-present hand on the shoulder just in case you do something wrong, or even if you haven't done something wrong. They're meant to be helping people and sorting things out when things do go wrong. It's not meant to be like I'm always just turning my pockets inside out for the police and that's what their job is, just to hassle people for no reason. Just shit. And you were near a crime that we may or may not have to prove even happened, therefore we can stop you. It's just like, what is that? What is that
and
approach?
That erosion as well within society doesn't benefit the police or the community, because what happens then is when it's taken to the extreme, you get things like the Brixton riots occurred when the level with the police and society in that area just clashes so much that there's, and it was the same with the riots in Tottenham as well, because when that happens, when there's no trust at all between those two groups, it just doesn't end well at all.
No, and it's meant, and it should, you know, in an ideal world, which I know that this is very difficult for this to ever happen, but theoretically, the police should be like, right, they're there, I feel safe. That's what it should feel like. Not, look at those dickheads, they're going to make our life or our night or my brother's life or my mate's life worse on a consistent basis. That's not what it's meant to feel like. And, you know, when people feel like they're just being victimized all the time, that is what it feels like.
You just should, I mean, I know it sounds like a bit of a sort of nostalgic notion, but, you know, if you are going to have police on the streets, you know, you need better community policing. You need police who know the community, who know people in that area, who know the community leaders. You know, we had a lot of them when I was growing up, not a lot, but you had people that knew the sort of the area, knew people were, and could police with a sort of, in a common sense way as well. And also they got on with people. It wasn't just you felt it was us against them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There was a cop around our way that everyone knew, and a lot of us hated him because, you know, now and again you get nicked. But he was like, he knew the area, he knew who you were. You know what I mean? Like he got on with people. I've seen a lot of that when I was covering, you know, like different stories where policing works, especially in South Manchester, where there was so much violence, especially gun violence at a time, you know, the whole Gunchester thing and thing. It was winding down by the time I was reporting on it. But you had like these community leaders like Mothers Against Violence and people like that who worked with the police and made those areas better and safer. And, you know, managed to get through and get to a place where it was making life easier for the police and easier for the community. And there was just less fucking crime. And it was just like, now you're going backwards, like you said, Joe, and going to the right or whatever, where America's doing it, where it's just like, let's just steam into people. Let's just fucking pin them up against the wall, search them when they've done nothing wrong. And let's face facts as well. You know, in an ideal world, a stop and search goes, excuse me, can I just stop you for a minute? Right, empty your pockets. I'm stopping you and searching you under Section 60. Yes, officer, no problem. In reality, it's come here. What you stop and searching me for? Just empty your pockets to ask the fucking questions. Fuck off. Then the next thing you know, it kicks off and you're getting nicked for violence or whatever you get, you know what I mean? It just causes shit. Or people come around and see what's going on. What you got hold of him for? He's not done anything wrong. Get off him. Do you know what I mean? It just leads to that sort of, I keep going back to it, but that us and them thing. And also, it's more likely to just cause shit in communities and, you know, make life harder for the police and young people. I just think that it's just this draconian attitude that the Tories have towards almost everything. Do you know what I mean? It's like Priti Patel is just fucking horrible, horrible woman. And it's like, oh yeah, immigration, we'll stick him in a fucking island somewhere. Oh, crime, we'll just bang them all, lock them all up, or make him fucking wear, you know, high-vis vests and paint fucking fences. Or we'll just stop and search everyone, and doesn't matter if it doesn't work, we'll just keep doing it. It's just, she's so fucking right-wing in her approach to it. You know, this is the one that wanted to, actually was a staunch death penalty supporter until as recently as 2012, I think, and was just like, you know, until it became completely untenable and she just had to give up on that idea because no one was going along with it. And obviously the miscarriages of justice that we've seen would have resulted in fucking God knows how many innocent people being killed. But she actually,
but Jay, what we do is we make sure we get the right person before we kill them. Jay.
On the question time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then
what about all these people, these 30 people that have in the last 10 years been released from prison, having been proved that they didn't murder? Yes, but what we'll do is we make sure we get the right people before we electrocute them to death. Because otherwise that would be bad, but we won't make those mistakes. Like, what are you talking about?
It's like, it doesn't even, like, these aren't words that make any sense. What you're saying doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So what, you were just nicking people and putting them in jail for life, even though you weren't sure. Shut the fuck up, man. You just, obviously.
Most people that I know, they don't speak to the police because they just have this idea of don't speak to the police because it won't end well. And this idea of ACAB 1312. Yeah,
I mean, it's weird because, you know, as I've got older and obviously, you know, the sort of shit I used to get in and everything, my attitude's changed, and when I was reporting it changed a lot. But I get it why young people think like that. I do. Do you know what I mean? And I used to think like that a little bit as well, a lot as well. And you know, it's funny because Joe, because one of the lads at work who we work with, Ronnie, he was telling me how he got stopped in the traffic centre by armed police because he'd had a row with someone in the traffic centre. And I just think, you know, that really annoyed me, that, because I was like, why are armed police stopping two black lads in a shopping centre who haven't broken any rules or laws? Do you know what I mean? What the fuck does that look like to anyone? And what does it say to them? Do you know what I mean? I was so glad. I was thinking, if I'd have walked past that and seen that, I'd have gone fucking apeshit. Because it's like, what are you doing? Why are you stopping them? Why are you carrying a fucking gun? Stopping two lads who've not broken any laws in front of everyone in the middle of a shopping centre? Are you fucking stupid? It's just things like that. You just, you know, you can't do that. You've got to have a little bit of common sense. But for, you know, not to go off on a tangent, but after the arena attack, if you noticed, like, you probably saw the images or the video of the copper Ringa Ringa Roses with the kids. What happened was in Manchester, we had a shitload of armed police, and they were trained to be friendly and to talk to people and to talk to kids in particular, not make everyone scared. I know this sounds crackers like I'm making it up, but it was true. It was like what they would do. So if kids saw them, they'd be like, hey, okay. And, you know, because it's scary, you know, we've had this terrible tragedy when 22 innocent people, many of them children, have died. All of a sudden, everywhere you go in the city centre, you've got just armed police with these big guns. Kids are obviously scared, understandably. A lot of adults were scared as well. And the police were like almost overly friendly to put people at ease, you know, like very chatting. I'm not saying you have to have fucking police go around hugging everyone or anything like that, but you can have a more common sense approach to it rather than just this
frustration from
bang everyone up.
That they go after really small things like binge drinking and people smoking weed instead of actually the important issues within society that need tackling. And it seems like there's a real focus on like petty working class crimes instead of the bigger things like fraud and other stuff like that doesn't quite get the same attention.
No, 100%. This is it. And if you look at some of those crimes, like fraud or whatever, fraud, you know, can be a millions of pound crime. Yeah, selling weed or fucking shoplifting can be like, you know, 20 quid or something. And yet you get cranked down on more for doing that than you would for fucking ripping off however many people for millions of pounds.
It's a way. I mean, it's a waste of police time as well. I mean, I remember when. I mean, I was involved, but the people that I knew that were like 14, 15 used to go out binge drinking all the time, and like the amount of fun the police took in seizing like bottles of vodka and stuff. It's just pathetic. Like, do your job.
See it. You see the glee, the look on the face when it's like, well, what do we have here then? Tip that out in front of you. Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah,
I've had them ones. I had them ones near a Sainsbury's once, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the Sainsbury's there and buy some more. And he was like, "No, that's up to you.
That's your decision.
Yeah,
it's your decision. Yeah, just shout."
Isn't it that Arctic Monkey song, Riot Van? Explains it well.
It does. It really does. On that bombshell, we'll leave it there. We don't got any Scotty, but he'll be back for the next one, I assume. James, what are you up to?
Not much, really. Just waiting until I go to uni, and hopefully we don't go back into a lockdown before then, because be quite pissed off. I'm paying £9,000 a year to do online lessons. But
where are you going to uni?
Salford.
Yeah. So what are you studying?
Journalism in brackets broadcast.
Good lad.
Close brackets.
Hey,
nice.
Good
Very
lad,
good. Very exciting.
Hey,
are you moving?
Of course, yeah.
Good. Nice.
He's going to be a proper Manx now, isn't he? Eh? He's going to be part of the Salford Mafia. Whereabouts? Do you know where you're moving to yet?
Yeah, it's you know, Salford Crescent train station.
Yeah.
It's like right next to Peel Park. So
nice.
Oh, is one of the new buildings next to the actual campus?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, very swanky. You missed the Castle Irwell days. Trust me, those mice put up a fight. My first ever place. Sorry, I know we said we were going to go.
Go on.
My first room in Castle Irwell, the radiator was stuck on full blast for 1 calendar year. So in the winter, wasn't too bad. In the summer, it was at some points well over 45 degrees in that room, and I used to have to put 2 towels completely submerge them in water, put them in the freezer, and then put them on my radiator so I could sleep at night in the summer. And then you go upstairs and you open the fridge and there would be mice in the fridge, which is, I didn't know that was possible. Obviously there was like 5 or 6 of them. They'd pull the door open like something from Cinderella, but you really missed out in those places. Sensational stuff. But yeah, you might actually get working radiators and no vermin.
How boring, eh? Imagine if you got working radiators and no mice in your fridge. You know, that's not the true
another time,
uni experience.
Another time, sorry, this is the last one.
No, go on.
I was walking back to my dorm one night, and there's a woman with a kid, who, you know, like a young kid, 4 or 5 years old, and just in front of everyone, a fox ate a goose alive, and the look on that kid's face when that goose was just doing everything it could not to die, but failing is something that will stick with me for the rest of it. Just this, but it was just like something from a cartoon. The bush was like shaking and rattling, and like feathers were coming out of the bush, like something from a cartoon pantomime. But yeah, so that fox just did its business, and that kid is scarred for life. But it was a brilliant time and a brilliant place to live.
Thanks for putting that image in my head.
You're welcome.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you anyway, James, when you're in Manchester, mate. We'll have to have a few meetups. Anyway, you know what to do. Hit subscribe as well. Subscribe to.
What about you two? You can't ask me what I'm up to and then dodge the question yourself.
All right, then. That's a good point. Joe, what are you up to?
I'm thinking about going and getting some dinner because I just went out for played tennis for a few hours, and now I'm so hungry. I'm going to go get some dinner.
Tennis.
Yeah, he's proper middle.
Yeah, my flatmate plays tennis, so I've just played with him.
Yeah, I played 5-a-side tonight. So, because I'm working class, unlike fucking.
Well, I didn't grow up playing tennis. I'm not good at it. I only played about 5 hours tennis in my life.
Yeah,
darts. I had a little pool table when I was a kid. That was more like it.
Backgammon and all that. Dominoes. That's what I used to play.
Yeah.
Do you ever
we used to just play spitting.
Spitting.
Just spitting and that. What's your game, fella? Spitting.
Probably, yeah.
Not bad.
That
Did
rock
you
throwing.
ever have a pissing contest in the urinals?
Yeah. See if you can get it over your own
high,
head.
piss up the big urinal, shared urinal.
Me and Joe still do that at work.
Yeah, but we don't do it in the urinal.
We just do it out the window.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a bus stop just directly underneath us. If you get Marjorie in the morning, you get 50 quid.
Yeah. So make sure you're checking Joe Smith 93 out on the
Careful for wearing a
socials.
sombrero, isn't it? It all just collects in there.
Yeah, it does. She loves it. Make sure you're checking James Young TV out as well on the socials, and Jay Motti. And even though he's not here, check out our kid because he'll be back for the next one. And subscribe to the channel and all that stuff. We'll be back with another Scotty, Motti, Youngy and Joe.